Hello, this is Angela with Progress Permaculture, and I'm here with Casey, and we are in Hood River, Oregon, which is about an hour away from our home. We're here because we wanted a few days to go hiking and enjoy the scenery out here, and we haven't been to Hood River in a long time. Last time I was here was like 5 years ago for roller derby, and all I did was roller derby. So we're here to enjoy the wilderness, and I thought this is a good opportunity to talk about the way that we interact with nature and enjoy it. So in permaculture, we have 12 principles, and I think for a lot of people, they think about those tangible rewards, right? Those yields of something like storing energy in batteries when you have solar panels, or they think about a harvest of crops, or they think about, cutting down a tree and getting a yield of wood for your fireplace. But I like to think about intangible yields as well, because they're just as important. So one of the intangible yields that I talk about a lot is the way that we design beauty into the garden. And beauty is a yield, right? Our ability to enjoy the aesthetics of the garden and to perceive the visual beauty, the aroma of the garden, all of that is a yield. And I think there's other intangible yields as well. And one of those is really evident to me when I'm out hiking, is the yield of the enjoyment I get hiking in nature, and how my particular way of interacting with whatever trail we're on and whatever little bit of Mother Nature we're in is really different than other people in my family. And so I thought this was a good opportunity to talk about how we can each get different intangible and important yields out of our experience with nature. I didn't actually realize I didn't actually realize that people had different ways of perceiving or interacting with the natural world until I was hiking the other day with Ruth, and she was talking to me about the way that she perceives nature. So last week I was hiking with my eldest kid, Ruth, in the Hoyt Arboretum, and I was mentioning how much I enjoy hiking and what a benefit it is to me and how important it is to be out with Mother Nature. And I made some comment about how when I walk along a trail, that my brain immediately just goes to identifying everything around me. Like right now, right in front of me on the other side of the camera, there's a vine maple, and underneath it there is a snowberry and Vancouveria and a sword fern. And that's the way that I enjoy interacting with nature, is like taxonomically, that I go through and my brain just immediately catalogs all of the species. And not only that, but then I look at the way that those species are interplaying with each other and how they're situated in the landscape. And so I made some comment about I love being able to identify everything around me, and I enjoy the chase of having to go dig up information and identify a plant or a fungus or an insect that I don't already know. And so for me, those are kind of some of the big yields. There's the piece of being in nature, but the way that I interact with it is very much about identification, because I feel like the more I can identify each individual species and the more I learn about that species, the better I can understand how it is situated in the landscape, how it interacts with other species, and get a bigger and more holistic view. So I like that permaculture principle where we say design from patterns to details, and then I go from details back up to patterns, and how both of those are really important to me. And Ruth was saying that's not how she views hiking at all. She said she identifies about 40% of the species when she's hiking, that she just notices them and knows what they are, and oh yeah, that's this. Oh, this is a invasive Himalayan blackberry. Oh, this is stinging nettle, I want to avoid it. But that predominantly she views her interaction with nature through the lens of an artist, because she is an artist. So it's looking at a particular vignette, right? Let me stand up and so looking at this little patch of stream and saying, oh, look at how I could paint a picture of this. Look at how this shrub arches into the water, and what a beautiful setting that would make. A backdrop for a portrait I might want to paint of a friend. Or she looks at the way that the ripples move through the water and says, how can I capture that in a painting? Or looks at a particular mushroom coming up and saying, how can I do a very detailed little portrait of that mushroom? So she's always thinking of framing everything through the eye of an artist, thinking about how would I situate myself and frame this and turn this into a painting. And that's so interesting, because I don't think that way at all. I don't think of how it would translate into art. I just think about how things are interacting right now, how they are existing right now in the real world. And so to me, I find that really fascinating, the way that we can have such different perceptions and such different intangible yields and still really enjoy nature, how each of us as individual, unique human beings get something really different out of the experience, and they're all really valid and important ways to enjoy nature. Okay, so Right, we're talking about how when we're out hiking in nature, that different people interact with nature in different ways and like get different yields, experiential yields out of it. So I was talking about how when I go through, one of the things I enjoy and automatically do is I am identifying plants and fungi and animals and insects as I go, and thinking about how they interact with other living things and with the landscape itself. And Ruth was telling me that's not how she interacts at all. So I imagine you don't either. So maybe you could share what your process is, like what you get out of hiking and how you perceive and interact with it.
Well, I mean, I think when we're on hikes, kind of two things happen. One, I do identify a lot of plants if I find them interesting, but only the ones I find like intriguing, not all of them. So that's probably like, 20, 30% maybe.
You don't feel compelled to try and identify every single thing as you pass it like I do.
No.
Yeah.
And also we're usually together, so I can ask you a lot of the time. So
yeah, that
does help. Two, I try to keep a mental map of where we are and what the trail is doing, so I know how much time it's going to take for us to go places. And not just like, we're roughly here, but rather a fairly detailed map so I can go along with it and make decisions when we come to intersections about what we're going to be doing next.
Versus I have no mental map and no natural sense of direction whatsoever.
You can map things sometimes, but you've even admitted you don't know which way north is.
I can do like a site map of a garden, but I struggle to build a mental map. Like for me, I'm so busy interacting with the different individual elements that I don't think about building a bigger map of where we're going, and it's easy for me to get lost.
Like, if you don't look at the map here, could I ask you which way you think north is?
Yeah, no, I have no idea. I have no idea, but you
just talked about it 2 minutes ago.
I don't know what you're talking about. You have a natural sense of direction, though, so you always know where north is, and I don't. I could not tell you the cardinal directions at all right now. Yeah.
That way's north.
Okay. Well, but the second we get around the bend, I won't be able to say it again. Okay, so let's hike. Okay, so say what you were just saying.
Well, I was just saying, you've seen me do this with Harold before on our hikes of, one way to understand what's going on around you is look for the story it tells you. And part of this might be because, he and I are both kind of history buffs,
So as history buffs, you guys often think about, obviously, the history and the story that a place has to tell.
Right, it's that, but also I think part of it's the cultural background I come from. I'm Chickasaw, and a large part of most Native American cultures, at least in North America, have to do more with story than with written anything. So
that makes a lot of sense when you think about the fact that so many of the stories of your people are about the ways that humans interact with nature and the interplay between the Chickasaw people and the natural world, and our stories to explain phenomena in the natural world and to explain, whole ecosystems and explain the behavior of different animals, right? There are all of these rich stories that are a way of perceiving and understanding the natural world.
And also explaining how we as a people got to where we are with those.
Cool. Thanks for sharing.
Yep.
Okay. So let me give you an example. As we're out hiking and we're walking through, my brain is just boom, 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 identifying things. And that's a huge part of the enjoyment for me, is being able to pick out different species and know them by sight, and then think about how they are placed in the landscape Mother Nature has placed them, or perhaps humans, and how they are interacting with other plants or fungi or objects or animals in the landscape around them. So we're walking through and I'm like, oh, boom, locust. Oh, cherry. Oh, Nootka rose. Oh, my husband. As I walk through, for me, so much of the enjoyment and so much of my process of interacting is identifying. And I think that is how I imagine most people engage with nature, is that they just run through their catalog and they identify things as they see them, and then they look at the associations between the species. But speaking with Ruth and with my husband, I have learned that that's not how most people, or at least other people in my family, interact with nature when they're out and about hiking.
So what are those intangible yields that you get when you interact with nature or with your own garden system? And how do those yields enhance your experience of nature or the garden, and how are they important to you? In our permaculture systems, how can we better take into account the need to design for those intangible yields? How can we better value them?
Thanks so much for watching. Please don't forget to click like and subscribe, and check out the GoFundMe at the top of the video description for Selwa and her family. Thanks.